Welcome to Research Renaissance, presented by the Karen Toffler Charitable Trust. Embark on a journey into the forefront of cutting-edge brain science as we feature insightful discussions with a diverse array of guests, from early career researchers pioneering groundbreaking science to influential voices in investment communities, policymaking, and research institutions. Together, we delve into neurological diseases, their causes, treatments, and the quest for cures. Join us in advancing our understanding of the brain and addressing its ailments. Welcome to Research Renaissance. I'm Deborah Westphal, your host and guide through the fascinating future of the brain. Joining me today is Katie Pizzone, the Senior Director of Philanthropy at the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation. Today, we will be discussing her efforts to advance innovative treatments for those who suffer Alzheimer's. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you for having me, Deb.
Yes, thank you for making the time. And I'm really looking forward to learning a little bit more about ADDF and what you do there as an organization, and then just your role, because it's a pretty dynamic environment. And I'm sure you have a lot of insight into kind of what's going on the philanthropy side. So I would just like to start with, what inspired you to focus on philanthropy and, just a little bit of your background and your journey, and how did you get to ADDF?
Yeah, it's always fun to talk about one's own origin story because I feel like at different times in your life, you'll pick out different pieces of your past that lead to where you are now. And I think back to about 20 years ago when I was in undergrad. I was volunteering at a nursing home, and my partner, Armand, who I went to visit every week, he was moved to the Alzheimer's unit. And I remember that they didn't usually have volunteers go to that unit, but since I was with him, I was able to continue on. And that was really my first introduction to Alzheimer's disease in a real way. And oftentimes, slowly, his memory of me went away, but I continued to visit the floor and visit the residents whose families did not often visit. And people had all different states of the disease. But I remember that really fondly, because it was people that really enjoyed the company of a companion, and it really opened my eyes to how just terrible the disease is in terms of taking away your memories and that kind of whole piece of humanity. So I have been fast forward, I have been in the fundraising and philanthropy world for over 15 years. I started raising money for inner city education. That was something that was really calling me to help in that area in the South Bronx, outside of Boston, and in all over New York City. And then I moved into healthcare philanthropy. It was something that I got very interested in, and I worked for a while at an academic medical center, working with a portfolio of surgeons, helping them raise money for their research and for hospital capital projects. And was really enjoying that, really enjoyed working with doctors, working with patients, and learning about the very complex problems that healthcare brings and the brilliant minds that have dedicated their lives to solving these problems for people. So I kind of came upon the ADDF almost 3 years ago and was inspired by the mission and the business entrepreneurial mindset to really disrupting traditional philanthropy to an extent with venture philanthropy and attracting philanthropists who were interested in a risky model to make a big difference in an area where there hadn't been many breakthroughs over the years. So that was about 3 years ago. And now deep in it and really enjoying the fast environment that is really accompanying all of the amazing breakthroughs going on around us.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. Your background, I didn't realize that that's kind of where you started in as a volunteer, and I mean, just on the personal note, that had to be really hard. And but you use the word kind of fulfilling. So, can you just a little expand on that just a little bit, because maybe some of those families didn't visit because it was just so hard to see that person, disappear.
Yeah, it's something that I have a lot more perspective on now that I have gotten to know so many families with Alzheimer's in their families, people that are caregivers, people that are watching their parents and grandparents lose their memories and cognition. And I have a lot of kind of understanding of that difficult position that families are in. It's a really difficult disease for many years. Looking at the history of the disease, it was very taboo to even speak about it. And thank goodness organizations like the ADDF and a lot of our peer organizations, people have been courageous to speak about their Alzheimer's diagnosis and their family's Alzheimer's diagnosis. And I think people really have that courage because there's a lot more hope, and the science is bringing that hope. So it's a really good time now for people to come out of the woodwork and really champion the mission of therapeutic development because there's so much in the pipeline and so much promise.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. We don't talk about it too much, but Alvin Toffler passed away with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it is what kind of motivates us too. Is watching such a brilliant man just kind of disappear. So I do understand that. So tell us a little bit about ADDF, and you said these kind of words of a risky model and disruptive. What do you think is really unique? Because there's a lot of funders in this area, but what makes ADDF really unique?
Yeah. I get so excited when I have an opportunity to tell the origin story of the ADDF and also why we're so unique and why we're in kind of very unique space to enable breakthroughs. You think back about 27 years ago, Estee Lauder, of course, everyone knows Estee Lauder and their little blue cosmetic little creams and amazing, amazing brands. 27 years ago, Estee Lauder left $100 million to her two sons, Leonard and Ronald. And she had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she told them to do something about this terrible disease. So they founded the ADDF and they enlisted the help of one of Estee's doctors, Dr. Howard Fillett, who is now our co founder and also our chief science officer. And he was given a desk and a chair at Estee Lauder's headquarters and was told to get to work. So, Howard, his brilliant mind, there were a couple of things that from the outset he made very clear. One was that we were to focus on translational science. There was a lot happening in academia and in basic science, but we needed to get these discoveries to patients. So a focus on a future of translational science, a focus on three things: diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. And the third thing, a model of venture philanthropy, which means that the money comes in, traditional philanthropy from philanthropists, but instead of making typical grants, we make mission related investments, much like a venture capital fund or other investor would do. So we invest in academics as well as biotechs. And if those drugs, those diagnostics go to market or are sold, we're able to share in the good fortune of that and reinvest it back into our mission of drug development. So it's really incredible because unlike your traditional investor, we are agnostic to what kind of financial return we'll get. We're able to 100% focus on the promise of the science we're investing in. But, so many years later, I think last year we had about 4 million in mission related investments at the end of the calendar year. So it's kind of a proof point that, these investments that were such early science for many years are now getting to the marketplace.
So how do you choose? You mentioned that you're funding both academics and kind of biotech startups. There's a lot of them out there. How do you choose?
Yeah. Yeah, we have about 15 PhDs on staff, and they're a search and evaluation team. They really scour the earth for the best that there is in the science. They search, and we also have active RFP rounds, several per year, where there's the traditional LOI and then RFP, and our rigorous scientific diligence process is really what we're known for. We have this staff, but we also have over 150 reviewers, external reviewers that review applications once initial diligence has been done. And then we have a science committee that approves the final diligence, and then we have a mission related investment committee that scrutinizes and eventually approves the financial investment terms. So it's interesting because I often see the charts of LOIs we receive, and it could be over 100 for a certain cycle, and then they're whittled down narrower and narrower and narrower until we get our set of grantees. And our grants are, or not our grants, our mission related investments are up to 5 million per program. And so that is investments in therapeutics. I think we did about 40 million in therapeutics investments last calendar year. And then also our diagnostics accelerator fund, which is a $100 million fund and partnership with Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and a handful of other philanthropists. And that syndicate fund is a really powerful model to get less invasive diagnostics and more accessible diagnostics into the marketplace to eventually speed therapeutic development as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because if the goal is the translation, from research to that commercialization or to the patient, through commercialization, that acceleration, how are you doing kind of that acceleration? And do the reviewers, the 150 reviewers that you have, do they come from kind of all walks of life? Do you have the engineers or the designers or the people that are looking at kind of process or policies that might need to be changed?
Yeah, our reviewers are really from a cross section of kind of the whole continuum of drug development. We have engineers, people from the pharmaceutical industry, people from biotech, people from academia, more emerging scientists, so early career, people who have been in the field for a long time, and really a cross section of the field so that we really can do our diligence from every direction, because one reviewer is going to call out something that another might not notice.
Yeah.
And I think something about our model that is really important to us is that when we're really excited about a program, you know we'll work with the scientists to develop the application to, hey, work on this, come back to us. We need this data, come back to us. But what you're doing is really exciting and keep doing it. And we'll also, since our mission is to really speed this therapeutic development, we will, if we will try to connect our portfolio companies with other funders that we know, and really try to build those bridges so that these programs can happen. We know that we could never be the only funder that puts these programs through, and so we really rely on our community to get excited about what we vet as the best science out there.
So tell me a little bit about your role. And it sounds like you're not only doing fundraising, but and you're doing more corporate and foundational fundraising. Is that correct? Versus individual, kind of broad individual philanthropy. And is partnerships underneath that too? Is that just a part of it?
Sure. Something that is unique about the ADDF is that the Lauder family, about 3 years ago, made a transformative $200 million gift to the ADDF to cover our operations for the next 15 years. So we're able to tell our donors that 100% of their gifts go directly to science, which is an incredible thing to be able to tell donors. And so we work with individuals, mostly individuals and foundations, I would say. And we haven't traditionally been a retail charity. We don't do, walks or big mailings. So we have a small group of 100 to 200 donors that really make up our philanthropic community at the ADDF. And it's really wonderful as a fundraiser. It's a really relationship driven job where I feel like I know our community pretty well, and I'm able to spend time with people and hear their stories, which then I think enriches our work all around. And we have a pretty lean team that some people equate to kind of that startup mentality. But it's really nice because I can introduce a lot of our scientists to our donors and really enrich the relationships across the organization to give people a very close feel to, who they're entrusting their philanthropy with to make these decisions on where the investments go.
Yeah, I think that's great. And from your website, I mean, the group that you have of your partners is very impressive. And I think sharing that information and really sharing it with the researchers and getting it close is important. And we try to do that also. How do you see philanthropy changing? Because I saw somewhere this past week, I read something in a philanthropy magazine or something that says, 80% of donors, if there's not a kind of return or the value impact communicated, that they don't trust to give their money to. And is this changing? Is there, what are kind of the factors do you see that are changing, especially for the future?
Yeah, I would say, in the last 10 years, I've seen a big shift of funders, especially big institutional funders, really formalizing how they're giving and really expecting, like you said, ROI in terms of data, in terms of impact, to make sure their investment is going to the right place. So I definitely see that as well. I think in terms of science philanthropy, it's in the last even 5 years, there have been such dramatic developments in science. And man, we could get into AI, we could get into a couple of things that are really going to help to speed clinical development and speed the rate at which we will be able to understand the brain, understand, our genes and our proteins and what we can do and how we can develop therapeutics to make us healthier, especially I'm so concerned about the neurological. There's such huge promise, and I think it's going to be translating that to philanthropists, which is going to be, our job, but a really exciting one.
So, how do you communicate that? Because not everybody is exposed to the science, exposed to the research, the changes that are happening. And it is very complicated. I mean, when you start having these conversations with the researchers and, they're throwing out words that are even hard to pronounce and, the mechanisms of the cells and the rest of the body, how do you communicate the importance and the need for more investment in this area, and especially the neurological area?
Yeah, I think it's something we work at every day, and it's something that it's very important to us. Since I started working in healthcare philanthropy 8 years ago, and I don't have a science background, it's a challenge. And especially when you start talking about the brain, it's an even bigger challenge. I'm very fortunate that I work alongside 15 PhDs who are so generous with their time and explain things to me in layman's terms that then I can explain I start to get really excited when, all the connections are made between what's going on in the science and where philanthropists can really make a big difference. We're at a place where the first two disease modifying drugs are on the market. We're in a place where there are over around 125 clinical trials for Alzheimer's ongoing, whereas maybe 10 years ago it was less than half of that. you know, e- Excitement in the field is blowing up. And at the ADDF, we are very concerned to make sure that the best science that comes out of academia and isn't quite ready for pharma, we're very, very focused on making sure that that science is shepherded through to the finish line so that it will reach patients. And we communicate that constantly. It is very important to what we do. We travel across the country, around the world, beat our drum, try to get in front of the right people who can partner with us and walk with us in our mission to prevent, treat, and cure Alzheimer's disease.
So you mentioned some of the emerging trends in the science, and a lot of it isn't, there's a microscope underneath, looking at cell structure. It is AI, it's technologies, it's imaging, it's other functions that our body is doing that might be impacting the brain or impacting these diseases. What do you think is the most kind of either interesting or the most potentially disruptive that's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
So, I'm going to take a page out of our co founder and chief science officer, Howard's book. He was asked this question a couple of weeks ago, and I think he's right that there's a lot of promise in the use of repurposed drugs for Alzheimer's disease that just haven't been tested for Alzheimer's disease. So your metformin, your GLP-1s, those drugs that are good for the heart, a lot of people are taking them, but they're likely also good for the brain. So we are funding right now a combination trial of lifestyle intervention plus metformin out of Mia Kivipelto's lab in Sweden. We also funded a precursor to a GLP-1 study that's going on right now. We co-funded that with Novo Nordisk, and now they have their trial for their GLP-1 for Alzheimer's disease. And results from that from both of those trials should be coming out in the next 18 or so months. So just kind of pushing through those repurposed trials, I think is going to be really exciting because now that we have these disease modifying monoclonal antibodies on the market, you can then combine them with these repurposed drugs. And so that then opens a lot of novel drugs are in development as well, a lot of small molecules, which that means a pill form to protect your brain from developing amyloid plaques and before getting the disease. So lots of exciting things to come. Some are really early, but in the next 1 to 2 years, there will be exciting new drugs approved for Alzheimer's. I believe that. And then in the next 6 to 8 years, I feel like it's going to be a whole new world in terms of bringing hope to patients with Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of share that. I'm very hopeful. It's probably because we know these researchers and we know their passion and their dedication. I think that's true. What about, the diversity of the science? Do you have any thought or how does ADDF look at that? Because we're finding that, much of the science has been kind of geared towards males, white males, with an economic background of, a certain range. And that we're finding there's a real difference between even like the female brain and the male brain and just some of the background and genetics of different kind of races. How does ADDF, think about that? And has that been a change of strategy?
Yeah. From speaking with our investigators and getting to know the clinical trial field, diversity in clinical trial recruitment continues to be a challenge. For our piece, we look for the best science regardless of other factors. So it's not something that, is a part of our diligence process, though it is a problem. And we have funded investigators that have a big focus on seeking diversity in trials. We fund Dr. Rhoda O out of Boston University, who is a big advocate she's a big biomarker expert, and she has a big biomarker database and is very big on diversity and collecting the biomarker data. I know that some of the pharma companies we're working with are doing some trials that are really trying to get at diverse populations as well. So I agree with you that everyone's biology is different, and we know that the future of Alzheimer's treatment, much like in cancer, will be combined therapies, prevention, precision medicine, and precision means how are you different, and based on your specific biology, how are we going to treat your disease? So I know a lot of work needs to be done there across the field, but there are really, really great leaders out there doing the work.
Is this emerging kind of focus on neuroethics? Is that something too that is changing? I don't know if you have much to say about that, but I've talked to others that said there is issues when we start to really probe the brain, and it is our essence, it is who we are. And then there's the other side of it that says if we know and we can diagnose, but we don't have the drugs yet, is there ethical issues with that? And, the natural is to lead to, insurance complications and, things like that. So do you have any thoughts on that? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm kind of curious because, you know, focusing on the future, is this an area that you're starting to talk about?
It is something that has come up, especially recently. We do have proven methods of both prevention and treatment now in the marketplace for Alzheimer's disease. So we're big advocates for, if you would like to seek a diagnosis, you know, eh, at the in partnership with your doctor, do that. And then that's something that you can speak about with your doctor. We always bring it back to kind of that doctor patient relationship, but those are all very interesting questions that could be expounded upon, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's just an area that I think, there's a few kind of leaning into it that, are foresightful enough to say, hey, we may have some challenges here in the future. And good for asking the questions, so that we can kind of keep up with that. Is there any kind of stories that are really near and dear to your heart, especially in the last 3 years, about something, a partnership you built or some funds that you got, that you funded, that, was just an amazing story of hope and kind of, or success that you would like to share?
Sure. You know, I get such joy out of our relationships with our partners. And, right as I was starting at the ADDF, a family came to us that was just kind of getting into philanthropy. They had founded a company, sold the company, and wanted to do some good in the world. They had Alzheimer's in their family on both sides and wanted to make a difference. And for, in memory of their loved ones and for their children and their children's children. And they did a lot of research in the field, talked to a lot of people, and were directed to us. And it's been a lot of fun seeing them grow in terms of their knowledge, but also see them fund really important projects in the diagnostic area, in the therapeutic area, and just kind of really feeling like, you know, true partners in philanthropy. And they've seen all of the advancements right alongside us, and it's been a real joy to watch them grow in their expertise while the field is exploding as it is. So I think it's really those kinds of, relationships and seeing them so fulfilled by the impact they're making that really is such a joy in my everyday, and I know in a lot of my colleagues' everyday work.
Yeah, that's got to be very fulfilling. You've used that word relationships a couple dozen times. I haven't been sitting here counting specifically, but many in the area they think of fundraising or more of fundraising versus philanthropy, but they think it's just just ask for the money, and just give us a check. What you're saying is very different. It takes this relationship. It takes trust. How long does it take to build trust with on average, on a potential partner? Because it's got to be a lot of hard work.
Yeah. When people come to us and want to get involved with what we do, a lot of it is timing and a lot of it is just keeping the invitation out there. We're very agnostic also about who our partners are. If you would like to partner with us, come and partner with us. But sometimes it does take, years for a potential partner to translate into kind of that traditional funding. But I will say, some of our closest partners are not necessarily donors. Maybe down the road they will be. Maybe they were several years ago. But we have a community that is so strong in, championing the mission that it can't necessarily be quantified by the dollars and cents, although somehow through, as our CEO likes to say, stewarding all the time, it does turn into the dollars and cents at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would think that you're spending a lot of time with, getting to know people, and as you said, building those relationships. Um, if you could change one thing about the current landscape of kind of nonprofit fundraising, particularly in this area, what would it be, and why?
I wish it was easier to for philanthropists and aspiring philanthropists to find the right fit in terms of an organization they want to be a part of. We find a lot of people want to do good and then they try to set up their own thing or do their own thing, and if they could just be connected to the right place that's doing the work where they could just quickly make an impact, that would be easier. There are some organizations that do help to do that matchmaking and advising, which I think is wonderful. But I think, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that would love to work with us and that we would love to work with that just haven't yet found us. I'm sure you all feel similarly at the Toffler Trust.
Especially when you're starting out, and you have your money, and you know what you want to do, and but you can't, you said it earlier, you can't go it alone, because not any one organization, no matter how big they are, can go it alone, nor would you want to, right? You want
Right, exactly.
these connections, and kind of transparency through those connections for the science. I think that's
Right.
important. Yeah.
Right. And it's so funny. Sometimes our funders will say, oh, I think I'm also giving to this, Alzheimer's charity. We say great, or oh, I'm, you know, or someone will say they're investing in one of our companies. We say great, that's great. We want the field to be pushed forward, whether it's with our funding. Ideally it's with a lot more funders than just us, and we're just here to push it forward.
Yeah, there's enough credit to go around for everybody, partnerships and
Completely.
pooling money or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be on your
Completely.
own. Yeah. So, what
Right.
advice do you give for these researchers and entrepreneurs? Kind of, you said shepherd them through this pipeline, and I'm sure there's mentoring that goes on through the organization, and all of that. But what advice do you give them? Because that is not, you're a researcher and you're trying to do good, but now you're trying to get it through this valley of death, if you would, across the chasm. What do you do, and what advice do you give them?
I think in speaking with our grantees, especially the more emerging scientists and early career, I hear them say, you just need to keep going. You just need to keep going. You need to lean on your network. You need to keep going. You need to, keep exchanging ideas with your peers. Some of these ideas and projects that early career scientists are pursuing are going to be the future of treatments. So keep going, keep searching, keep making connections. It's not easy. And I have the most respect for early career scientists.
Yeah, you've talked to them, and they get that first little bit of money from friends and family, and then all of a sudden they're staring down on not being able to pay bills and to keep going, and so they're scrounging up the dollars, and it's oh my goodness, and as you said, the solution may be there, or at least a big part of the solution may be there, and you want to lose it, but they're going through that conflict kind of has to happen, though, don't you think?
That's right. That's right. That's a part of it. I mean, you do the work and you roll up your sleeves and you grind, and then you get to the other side. But you're right, you can't do it alone. And it's funny how often I see our funded investigators popping up in other places, getting funding from here and there and everywhere. And it makes me so happy because it's wonderful to know that there are multiple sources for grant awards, investments, etc.
Yeah. So, as an organization, how long has ADDF been around?
27 years.
27 years. So, how does the organization stay fresh? And you said your model is disrupting and trying to a risk model. A lot of organizations, when they start to be in that 20-year, 25-year, it's kind of rote, right? They just do. How do you continue to disrupt yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are very focused on following the science. And as we have continued to follow the science, we adapt based on where the science is going. So, for example, about 5 or 7 years ago, our model was funding 80% preclinical science and 20% clinical. And our board made the decision to swap that. And now we fund 85% clinical and 15 to 20% preclinical. So that was one way that really disrupted our model, but it kind of helped us adjust to the future, which is exciting and it reflects where the science is going. And now that there are so many trials ongoing, it's really pushed us to have relationships with the pharmaceutical companies, namely the kind of what you call the big three right now that have drugs on the market, Biogen and Eisai and Eli Lilly. We are forming very close relationships with them to understand the kind of data that they need from potential drug candidates to pick them up and bring them to commercialization so that we can be best armed to look at our pipeline kind of in those valleys of death and understand how to best counsel our funded investigators. So, really staying on top of the science has helped us to stay disruptive, and it's not just staying on top of the science, it's looking ahead. We know that it was a few years ago we started talking about combination therapies as the future, and people didn't want to hear it, which is fine, but we kept saying that will be the future. Our chief science officer, Howard Fillett, combination therapies, precision medicine, and prevention, much like in cancer. And now that is being adopted as what it's going to be now that we have these drugs on the market. So it's almost, I don't want to go too far and say that Howard has really had a prophetic voice in the space for the last 27 years, but he really has. And we're able to kind of, take that brilliance of his and put it out there to our community. And those philanthropists willing to take risks and willing to, jump on board, have had a lot of fun kind of seeing the fruits of that So it's been really gratifying to be a part of it.
And he's mentoring people, correct? To have that sense about the future. It's is he doing that too?
Howard is out there. You open the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, BBC, Squawk Box. Howard is out there. He is mentoring the world. He is and mentoring our staff and mentoring scientists across the field. He's speaking all over the world. He's a keynote speaker at conferences. He's everywhere. And he also has a patient practice. He also sees patients, which is a huge informer of the way that he looks at things. He's always looking at the patients first. So that I think is wildly impressive, and that is something that we're also really proud of, that we are very patient focused and try to keep that in our minds as well.
So what do you hope for the future for ADDF and in those that I think there's an obvious answer, but maybe there's a not so obvious answer too.
Yeah. I mean, the ultimate hope for the future is that we'll go out of business, that we won't need to exist, right? And if you kind of step back from that, it's like I said before, combination therapies, precision medicine, and prevention, so that when someone has an Alzheimer's diagnosis, they can have an early and quick diagnosis or prevent the disease altogether and get a regimen that treats their disease and allows them to live, you hear that term now, health span, a long and healthy life, even if they're diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so that they don't lose their memories.
So as we kind of wrap up here, are there things that you wish people knew about what you do specifically that maybe they don't really understand or maybe appreciate that you really wish they would understand?
I think we really, all of us at the ADDF really see our work as a privilege and a responsibility to the patients that have Alzheimer's and their families, and the patients that will be diagnosed in the future. And we know that we are paving a future of prevention, precision medicine, and combination therapies. It's the future, it's coming. And we see it clearly when we look at what's going on in the field. And it's an incredible privilege and a gift to be able to give to my kids and then to their kids.
That's wonderful. I really appreciate you taking your time, especially out of your busy day here. And I've actually learned a lot from you, so thank you for that. That it's been a real gift. How can people get a hold of you or ADDF if they hear this and said, "Oh, I didn't know they existed," and would like to chat?
Yeah. So I'll direct people to our website, alzdiscovery.org. That's alzdiscovery.org. And then my email is kpizzone@alzdiscovery.org. Happy to chat with folks, answer any questions, introduce you to the ADDF. We have a lot of great events upcoming and a lot of great materials on our website as well. But I also want to thank you, Deb, and really appreciate the kind of cross learning between us and the Karen Toffler Charitable Trust, and early career sponsoring early career investigators is so important. And we're all in this mission together. And it's just such a privilege to be working with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and the trust really appreciates it. The trustees, and because it's our researchers that we hope someday we see them on your dashboard and your billboard over there.
That's right.
It's definitely a pipeline, and we
That's
got to
right.
work together. So again, Katie, thank you so much, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Deb, so much.
Thank you for joining Research Renaissance. For more information and to stay updated, subscribe for more episodes and visit our website at tofflertrust.org. Feel free to call us if you have any thoughts, suggestions, or just want to find out more about the Karen Toffler Charitable Trust. Until we meet again, onward and upward.